Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of The Letter running on Series X. The words come out with more force than I've intended. By the time I realize my slip-up, his lips are already spread in a sneer. Heat slowly crawls up my face.
Oh, so there is someone. You're so easy to read.
Briefly, his eyes search my face. I have no idea what he sees, nor do I care to know. But in the next second, he barks out a laugh, displaying his amusement without reserve to everyone within earshot. In that moment, I know I flipped a switch in him somewhere, and I've lost my chance to deny his assumptions. Do I even want to? Isn't that the reason why I've been so focused on my mobile, waiting for another message from him? For a reason to dump this awkward meeting to go after him?
Look how mottled you are. Now the nickname makes more sense. Shy Miss Pink and her cute little crush. The color suits you, by the way. It matches the hair.
It's not a crush!
Classic denial. But in reality, you want him to be yours, and your every move is made to make him notice you. In fact, you don't want him to see you with another man in a non-professional capacity, because he might misinterpret it.
The same thing goes for you, doesn't it? Bloody, yours is even worse. What about your wife? Aren't you concerned she might misinterpret this?
Daisy, just because we tied the knot doesn't mean we have to be joined at the hip at every single opportunity.
Don't be ridiculous. Why else would you marry her if you don't want to be with her for the rest of your lives?
Because, Daisy, she also has other things she can do with her life and friends to spend time with. Granted, I don't like some of them, and I have a few of my own she utterly dislikes. But wifey doesn't have to know my every move, nor do I hers. Do you know how boring that would be? To be with the same person for all hours of the day, losing sleep over the mere fact they're not with you? Or putting everything you have aside to please them, to have your whole world revolve around one person?
Aren't you just mistaking that for something else? Unlike you, there are other people here who don't share the same jaded outlook you have. Don't lump everyone together just because it didn't work out for you.
And you, my dear, are unexpectedly naive.
What's so naive about it? If you love each other, wouldn't you want to always see them, be with them, to have them focus solely on you? Maybe you haven't been loved enough.
Oh, it's that kind of thing for you, isn't it? The love is eternal, love is a strong emotion shite. A starry-eyed girl pining for her dashing Prince Charming? What's next? Romantic confessions of love? A grand wedding on the beach? Dozens of spawns running around in some picturesque home in the suburbs? How quaint. Are you also expecting it's going to be sunshine and rainbows after? A happily ever after? Please.
What? I never once said... And is all of that such a bad thing to hope for?
Woman, I've been married for 7 years, and I'm telling you, it's far from what you have in your pretty red head. Tell me, how long has this song and dance been going for you and your man? Maybe I am mistaken.
Averting my eyes from him is all I managed to do. What does his mere 7 years have compared to the 17 I've had with Ash? It's laughable he thinks those two things are even comparable. Ash and I may have never moved past the boundaries of friendship, like what I'm hoping for years, but what we have isn't something anyone can scoff at. I've always been by his side, endured everything with him. I know him better than anyone. No matter what this man, this complete stranger, says, I know there will always be a place for me beside him. And yet, yet.
Come on, Daisy, that shouldn't be too hard. 3, 5, 8, 10, 20.
His words easily seep into my heart like sharp daggers, gradually picking apart everything I've ever been sure of. Despite myself, the doubts resurface and my defenses crumble right in front of my eyes. It's no wonder he sees through me. As expected, he ridicules it. Laughs. Restrained, low and rumbling, a sharp sound striking the air around us, amidst the murmur of people and the soft notes of the music playing over our heads. His shoulders shake, and when his mirth becomes too much even for him, he reaches up a hand and passes it over his face, as if to hold his glee close to him.
Bloody bullocks, this is just brilliant. Oh, Mother, why do I always keep running into these things? This day couldn't get any better. I think I'm gonna need a stiff drink after this.
He dissolves into another peal of laughter, but when it subsides, what he has for me are more words, scathing each of them. The urge to run from here has never been this strong.
Is everything you said how you plan to act, if that man of yours ever ends up with you? Cling to him? Put him on a bloody pedestal? Let him become the center of your universe? Although with how long this seems to be going on, I think you've already done so. Marriage will just be icing on the top. Like some sort of reward for you, isn't it? For being a good, patient, loyal little girl all this time, never looking at another man. He must have been having a grand time with someone pining over him this long. I'm a little envious, to be honest. Maybe also a little surprised he hasn't suffocated from all your attention yet.
Laugh all about it if you want. It's not like you'll ever understand.
Luke falls silent. The ridicule in him is gone in an instant, and his eyes meet mine, sharp and imposing. A challenge, but I hold it against him with the same intensity, because if there's something I won't let his opinion trample on, it's this. What does he know? However, he's the first one who looks away, focusing his eyes back to where Kylie is, and for a moment I believe I've won, until he draws in a breath and turns back to me. The words he drops next, though hushed, hang heavily in the distance between us.
You're right. I won't. But I do know not to mistake love for obsession, woman. They are not the same thing.
It rattles. Out of everything he said tonight, this is the one thing that twinges my heart. Maybe it's in the manner he delivers it, the lack of conceit in his posture, or an underlying insult in the tone he takes. The remark is not meant to cut, merely to express a simple truth. This time it's him who holds gaze against mine. Another unspoken challenge, and I realize that if this happens minutes before, I'd already have an equally searing retort at the tip of my tongue. There's none. But the anger is there, ringing at my insides, prodding at the uncertainties I've long kept. Is it enough? We have the long years we've been together. We've had the memories. Whenever he needs me, until other people came in between us, I've always been the one there. And that dedication and loyalty should mean something, shouldn't it? I've always been sure of it, and that one day he'll see it for what it is. That never happens. Why do people think like that? In spite of that, in this minute, well, I mean, this is just fiction. So. But I do know people like that, obviously. Can't quite move on, you know. In spite of that, in this minute, under this man's scrutiny, my own heart wavers. Now I struggle to find the words. I guess I don't need to answer that. What right do you have? What right do you have just means more arguing. However, those are for me to ponder on. This arse doesn't need to hear them, and neither is he entitled to them just because he's dished out some profound-sounding life wisdom no one asked for. So I look away, hoping my own silence would be enough of an answer for him. And it is, for a moment. Up until furious tears trickle behind my eyes, stinging, begging for release, along with every other frustration this dumb talk has built up in me. All because of this man. I hate him. I hate the fact that he has to be the one to see me in this sorry state. I'm already expecting another barb from him when his expression shifts. Except he panics. In the span of 3 seconds, his expression changes from indifferent to concerned to utter panic. It would probably have been funny if I weren't so irked by the sight of this Glalkit bastard.
Hey, are you crying? Are you going to cry? Stop that right now, woman, or I'll...
Will you shut up?
He clams up almost before I could finish. Whether this is due to the sudden force in my voice or how I look, I pretend not to think of it. He seems like a deer caught in headlights, with way he's making himself smaller in his seat. But I'm still pissed. I'm tired, and if I can't punch him, I can at least scream at him.
You're an annoying bag of dick, you know that? If I hear another word from you, I'm sewing that bloody mouth shut myself!
It does do the trick. Not to the effect I've hoped, but for the moment I've snapped at him. The stinging at the back of my eyes melts away, and a strange calm overcomes me. A fragile thing when found in the middle of a busy coffee shop. Nevertheless, it's appreciated considering it doesn't last. Immediately broken by the very person that put me into this state with a few awkward pats onto my shoulder. Done twice. Thrice. And another. Until my patience runs out again and I'm pulling out the book from my bag, raising it threateningly over his head. It'll surely dent his skull if it slams down at this height. Part of me wants to see that, but I restrain myself. He has the good sense to recoil, though. Shortly, he shrinks back to his seat and waves his hand in front of him in a gesture of surrender.
Watch that book, woman! I already warned you about your little threats. You don't want to see my brand of angry!
Then keep your hands to yourself!
All right, that's it. People these days, I swear you treat them nicely, and this is where it gets me.
You're the last person I'd ever want to comfort me, even if we're the only two remaining people on Earth. Don't flatter yourself.
Okay, have it your way, Daisy.
And stop calling me Daisy! I have a name, you know!
He mutters something inaudible under his breath, although afterwards he doesn't say anything further. For the next minute he simply contents himself with making a mess out of the paper napkins, folding them into clean shapes without any clear intent, before crumpling them in his hand when he loses interest, and dumping them in a small pile in front of him. A waiter serves our meal soon enough, and Kylie makes her way back to our table. But before I can take a single bite, he mutters something. The words spoken in the same tongue he's used since morning, all under his breath, whenever the honest part of him would show. Despite my rather confusing opinion of the man, I stop short of shoving food in my mouth to look at him. His eyes are on his food as he speaks, busying himself with cutting a portion of meat on his plate. But what comes out of him only rings true against my ears, above the din of the coffee house.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
He spears a piece of his food, pops it in his mouth, and that's it. One whole day with this man, and I still can't figure what his deal is. But for what it's worth as well, I don't think he's an entirely bad guy. The rest of our meal slips by in silence afterwards. Aside from Kylie's occasional chatter, the whole dinner goes by without another word exchanged between the two of us. Somehow we managed to make it through the whole thing without triggering another tension-riddled conversation. A good thing, perhaps. One, because Kylie's sitting in front of us, and two, I probably wouldn't be able to hold a proper conversation with my mind heavy with thoughts. We depart from the coffee house just as the evening crowd starts to thin out. The same wordless silence fills our short walk back to the school, except for when Luke gestures at a nearby flower shop and enters it without waiting for Kylie and I. He emerges minutes after, carrying a bouquet of daffodils with the same softened expression back on his face. Unlike the previous ones, he's tucked this one away almost as soon as he looks up at us, a moment he's not willing to share. In my confusion, he merely answers with a shrug and continues walking.
For someone important.
I accept it for what it is, if only because he doesn't owe me an explanation. It doesn't leave more questions about him, each one as baffling as the previous ones. Those are the last words spoken this evening before we head on our own ways. Up until I arrive home, I still can't understand him. Here, however, a whole different set of questions await me, and much like everything today, it comes with the littlest of things. A lone note greets me upon reaching my unit's door. The edges flutter lightly against the faint, warm breeze passing through the small complex. My hand stops short of twisting the knob as I stare at it, though I don't make any moves to take it. Ashton's neat script lines its surface. Dropped by earlier, you weren't around. Any ideas where Scaredy Cat is? I couldn't contact her. Inspector Abigail has a few questions. LPD stuff. Something about her dead coworkers. Anyway, let me know how the two of you have been doing. I'll see you later, Ash. The message he left, short and straight to the point, but not without the underlying hint of friendship. He's looking for Isabella, apparently. Something about LPD's investigation of her coworker's death, but ends in a formal tone by checking on me. Us. Any other day, the former part of his message will likely prod at the piercing envy I've been holding, while the latter will probably send my heart aflutter. Little things from him that I want to mean something more. Yet this time, only guilt fills me, and my eyes briefly shift towards Isabella's empty unit. Luke's words repeat inside my head as I do so.
For what it's worth, Rebecca, I didn't ever think that's all there is to you. Why else would I leave my own goddaughter in your care if you're just some lovesick woman?
Have I always been like this?
This selfish? In truth, I've intended to call Ash after that dinner if I didn't catch him here, invite him to that party like I planned. There's time, and he's still probably awake at around this hour, but my hands won't move, and perhaps it is for the better. Until I've had time to think this through, it'll be best if I distance myself from those I've been clinging tightly to, from a different perspective, and see things for what they are. With a soft sigh, I reach for the note and crumple it under my hand. The knob twists open with much ease when I enter this time. Maybe after some introspection it'll be easier. For tomorrow, I have that woman and the mansion to worry about. October 28th, Friday. The night wears on without further incident, despite the great number of thoughts swimming inside my head. Come morning, there is only a hush, a strange sort of stillness unlike the ones greeting me every morn. This one's uneasy, tight with anticipation, like a string stretched thin, merely waiting for the proper time to snap. Granted, it doesn't make my day any less pleasant, but the edge is there. As expected, the second I step out of my flat, it comes apart, broken by the voices of two squabbling adults echoing from a floor below. The quiet was nice while it lasted. Shane?
What the hell were you thinking?
I wasn't. Ow! Could you let go?
Not a few seconds later, they both ascend the stairs, with Ashton pulling Isabella by her wrists. She struggles, as she should, but his hold on her remains firm. Freeing herself means having to draw blood, as she attempts to pry his hand off with her other one, or using unnecessary force to push herself away, neither of which is better than the other. One could potentially end in an accident, while the other means having to hurt him physically. She has the good sense to realize that, at least. However, it doesn't take the desperate edge in her voice when she answers Ashton's temper with her own. So on they go, none the wiser to my presence.
Do you have any idea how much trouble you could get in?
That's why I'm asking you for help.
Is this what you've been doing these past 3 days? Because this doesn't make your case convincing, Isabella.
Rose died, Ash.
I know. Every single person in Luxford knows. It's on the damn news. But that doesn't mean...
People are missing. Some of those are my friends. And BRC's just covering it all up.
You can't just barge into my office and expect me to do anything about it, right off the bat. This isn't a children's game, Isabella. We have procedures. We have to follow protocol. There's red tape all over this case for a reason. We sure as hell don't investigate things just because some stupid letter spooked us.
Ash, you have to believe me this time. If we don't do anything right now, more people will...
It's been a whole week. This stupid letter prank is getting old real fast. I'm sick of it. It was funny the first time, not so much now.
You're the only one that can help me with this, Ash. Even Rebecca won't.
All right, you two are awfully loud. What's going on here?
Both of their heads snap up, almost in unison. A displeased frown is on each of their faces, but this is a necessary interruption. What can they do? People still in their units have already taken interest in the commotion, with some taking a peek behind their curtains, while others are bold enough to creak open their doors, if only slightly. If they don't keep it down, pretty soon our landlady will show up. Getting a reprimand from her is the last thing I want to happen, first thing on a Friday morning, even if this is hardly my fault.
Well, if you want to continue this, you two better do it elsewhere. You're disturbing other people.
Don't worry, we're done here.
No, we aren't. Becca, I looked it up. I called them. I visited some of them, and...
Which you shouldn't have done in the first place. Isabella, you're going to create more problems for us with what you're doing. A team has already been assigned to it. Leave it to us.
Your precious team is looking at it the wrong way. Becca, it's not just Rose. There are others.
The last bit strikes a chord, prods strongly at her memory, at that vicious smile already etched deeply inside my mind. The image appears clear enough that, at the mere mention of it, I stumble on my own question.
What do you mean?
The letter, Rebecca! It's not...
It's nothing. If there's really something going on because of that dumb letter, none of us would be standing here. We've all read it, haven't we? But Rebecca's alive, Zach's alive, I'm alive. So for the last time, this isn't a curse. There's a murderer on the loose, and your co-workers happen to be the victims. Give it a rest, Isabella. It's too early for this shit.
Don't you think that's too much for a coincidence?
Not so much. Most serial killers follow a pattern. I'll tell you about it some other time. And anyway, coincidence or not, the point is, civilians like you aren't supposed to get involved. You're putting yourself in danger.
I wasn't chasing after...
Will the both of you slow down and stop arguing for a minute? What's this about your coworkers, Belle?
Becca, please don't tell me now you believe this shit.
Sure, in a heartbeat, I'll agree with Ashton. That's how it has always been, besides having a very good point. Really, they're the very same ones he'll make every time I ask too many questions. But the fact of the matter is, what he wants to hear from me right now is far from what I've been seeing, sensing these past few days. It doesn't matter what Isabella or I believe on our own. Something odd has been happening around me, and that letter she picked up is at the heart of this. But, however, I respond to the question in their faces, only one of them will be pleased with it. I mean, I have been saying things. It would be weird to... I mean, these are both the correct answer. Belle, you shouldn't be doing these things, which is correct. But I have seen things, which is also correct. I mean, at least they're giving you two things which, you know, are not clearly right or wrong answers. Yeah, I'll say I've seen her. Ashton in particular won't be happy to hear it. Imagining the look on his face doesn't take too much effort. His entire posture shifts the moment my reluctance shows. Shoulders tensing, brows furrowing, eyes gaining a sharp edge. He's already bracing himself for the disappointment. And it will be a disappointment. Not in a million years that I ever believe I'll be saying this either.
I might have seen her. The woman Belle's been telling us about. The one she said she saw in the attic.
Both of them stare at me like I've grown an extra head, and for a few moments Ashton looks as if he's about to have a fit. The pause treads at his heels after, a silence thick enough one can almost hear a pin drop.
You're kidding, right?
Do I look like I'm joking?
Really, Becca? Not funny.
Ash, I'm not lying. Why would I lie about this? It's been this way since the film fest. The past few days have been really odd since we read that letter.
Or maybe you're all just feeling under the weather.
I'm not sick. Don't you think I'd know that by now?
Becca, you're starting to sound like Scaredy Cat. Give me a break.
Why don't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you two.
Isabella's voice cuts sharply through the conversation, abruptly putting an end to the brewing argument.
It's all my fault. This is all my fault. I was only hoping I could fix this before any of you. I'm sorry for dragging you all into this.
She breathes in, deep, steadying, and in that moment something falls behind her eyes as she looks away.
I'll fix this. I promise.
A quiet resolve. The same one I saw in her that night from 3 days ago, but this time it burns brighter. Even Ashton wavers at its sight. When she looks at him straight in the eyes, gaze unflinching, gradually his grip on her wrist loosens.
Belle, there's nothing to fix. The problem is...
Just this once, Ash.
Her voice, though small and lacking any force, stops him. Along with it, every sound, every noise dies around us, a hush descending as if the world is waiting for her words.
You don't have to come with me. But if I don't do anything, I am going to regret it.
She lays a hand atop his, gentle, pleading, almost intimate if one does not consider the circumstances we found ourselves in.
Please.
Ashton will never tell us all, will never admit it even to himself, but it is in that short second that his own resolve breaks. The moment the hard edge in his eye softens and he relinquishes his hold on her, letting his hand fall limply but to his side. Wordlessly, Isabella steps back and runs off, leaving only a muttered thanks and a small lackluster smile. Only after the last of her footsteps fades away does Ashton move, breaking the silence with one of his sharp exhales before reaching up to pinch the bridge of his nose in a gesture of frustration and surrender.
Did you really have to tell her that?
What do you want to hear from me then? That everything's fine?
No, I want all of you to stop putting these ideas in her head. None of it is helping. Never mind. Don't worry about her. I'll bring her back here.
He's already poised to leave when my own instincts take over. I reach for him, gripping his elbow with the same unyielding grip, the action prompted by voices whispering at the back of my mind. He's already made it clear he's not going to believe me, but he does deserve a word of caution. Who knows where all of this will take us? How all of this will end? He shouldn't be caught off guard, beliefs notwithstanding.
Ash, I know you don't believe in those things she's saying. And you know me. I'm less inclined to believe in those things as you do. But I've seen something. There's something strange going on here. You don't have to buy it. If you don't want to listen to me, fine. But please, try to hear her out. It's bad enough that Isabella goes off like this without telling anyone. I'm just worried something might happen to her if she keeps at it. Talk to her, okay?
As if she trusts me enough for that.
Doesn't the fact that she approached you first about this instead of me already say a lot?
A different kind of trust, granted implicitly and never spoken, sometimes too big, too fragile to last. He falls silent for a long moment as he turns it over in his mind. In the end, all he manages to offer is a small nod before he departs, a promise to, at least, listen to her, without the teasing or the jibes. A favor for me, and the least he could do for her. This is as much as I can do for him, as well, until I've understood what's happening myself. Tonight, hopefully, where this all started, and will provide the answers I'm looking for. Except the whole thing is off to a bad start, and all of a sudden, whatever Isabella claims dwelling in this mansion becomes the least of my concerns. Of all the cabbies in Luxbourne, I have to chance upon the superstitious one. Still not as bad as finding out your car's starter refuses to crank on when it was still working this morning, yes? But it's equally frustrating when you are forced to walk the rest of the way. All because the driver got spooked. Isabella and him will get along so well. I do get his reasons. After all, I've had my fair taste of the bazaar lately. All of which might have been brought upon by that letter Isabel found here. But you'd think he'd at least be charitable enough to take me a little closer to the house itself, not a distance 15 minutes away from it by foot. Good thing I'm not wearing anything too formal or constricting. Otherwise, that short walk would have likely put me in a bad mood, long before I have to suffer in a room full of strangers tonight. Although this soon proves to be a problem by the second the driveway comes into view and I near the entrance. Severely underdressed is a total understatement to describe how I look. Cars, worth more than my own apartment and childhood home combined, line the mansion's front yard. Men and women decked out in their best also flock near the entrance. Most are eager for the festivities to start, while some are simply idling about, enjoying the warm afternoon sun before it sets. But once the woman standing at the front porch speaks, their undivided attention immediately shifts to her. Presumably Mrs. Wright, from the confident manner she holds herself among present company. This despite keeping a far simpler appearance than the rest of her own guests, or not having her husband beside her. A trait worthy of utmost admiration at best. At worst, she's the envy of every woman, the subject of every gossip in Luxbourne.
Welcome, welcome everyone.
And Mum said we could be good friends. I can't even picture myself mingling with the kind of guests she has. Though I admit she does seem familiar, now that I've seen her this close. Memories of sitting in a vanity not mine, being dressed in clothes too fancy for my tastes. They flit briefly in my mind until her cheerful tone rises above the buzz of her enraptured audiences again.
Please, make yourselves at home.
I wish I could share her enthusiasm, really. But being surrounded by all this extravagance, for lack of a better term, merely makes me dread how the rest of the night might go. I shouldn't have let Luke's words affect me like that. I should have just gone ahead and asked Ashton like I planned. If he were here, then I won't have to...
Be careful with Shirley, alright?
The rest of that night dies in my mind at once. A moment of astonishment overcomes me before confusion sets in seconds later. It takes another for my body to catch up. Once it does, when I finally turn to see it for myself, it's his familiar mop of hair that catches my eyes first. And there he is, almost an arm's reach if it isn't for the guest standing between us. Ashton Frey, standing in the Ermengarde Mansion's driveway, with an air too lackadaisical for someone who absolutely abhors parties of any form. Or has any business here, as far as I know. The picture it forms is too bizarre for me, that my mouth speaks out ahead of any coherent thought.
Ashton?
He swivels on his heels and is with an equally puzzled face. An odd expression flashes momentarily across it once he sees me, though he blinks it away before I can figure out what exactly it is.
Becca, what are you doing here?
I was invited.
Really? I had no idea you were friends with the host.
Well, it's my parents, actually. But that's beside the point. What are you doing here? You hate parties.
I still do. I'm just here on behalf of a friend.
That in itself is weird coming from him. It doesn't help that he isn't even making an effort to spare a glance my way when he answers. Instead, they're focused at some point in the crowd, his gaze darting between people walking past us until a small frown forms in his face.
That's rare. Do you have someone with you then?
Nope, just me. I won't be staying long.
Well, if that's the case, maybe you and I can...
Chief?
Ashton, what's...
Unexpectedly, he places a hand on my shoulder, stopping me mid-sentence. He still has the distracted look on him, except this time his eyes are sharper, as if he has found what or who he's been searching for among the throng of partygoers earlier.
Sorry, Becca. I need to... There's something I need to check for a bit. I'll talk to you later. Do you have a ride home?
No, I had to take a cab here. My car wouldn't start this afternoon. But what about...
I told you to get that old thing checked before, didn't I? You can head back with me after this. Anyway, I gotta go. See ya. Be careful, okay?
I meet the smile he hastily throws my way with a frown of my own. What does he mean by that? But before I can ask, already he has turned his back from me and is walking away, without a single explanation whatsoever. In some desperate effort, I try to catch up to him, if only to know what warranted this sudden departure and his odd warning at the end.
Hey, be careful! About what
Only for my attempts to be interrupted by a muffled ringing in my pocket. Mom's cheerful voice greets me as soon as I answer.
Yes, I'm at the party already, Mom. Yes, I'll say hi to her if I can.
The conversation itself doesn't last long. Just a simple hello, a reminder to enjoy the party and to send their regards to their old student. And when the call ends, I get to look up. Ashton's already nowhere in sight. With a sigh and admittedly a little disappointment, I tuck my mobile back into my pocket and head inside. Even with familiar company, however, coincidental this meeting is, this is somehow shaping up to be a terrible evening. The party hits full swing an hour later. With the host's opening remarks given, still no sign of her husband, the poor woman, and the guests promptly fed, the band shifts this melody to a livelier tune. Soon, laughter and the rhythmic tapping of shoes fill the room, all in accordance to the lifting strains of music. It seems fun, I admit. Fascinating at certain moments, the flurry of dancers making their music their own, almost with no care in the world. If I weren't so indisposed, I'd have joined the crowd for a song or two. There isn't a lack of invitations anyway, plenty of them in fact, with some asking more than once. It's only my stubborn refusal that prevents me from joining them. And I can. A single nod is all it'll take, and the evening would have been far enjoyable for me. But pride in my own silly hopes, the thoughts of being seen with one of them by him, curbs that, as much as I hate to admit it, because doing so also means outright acknowledging the douche's claims. That he has to be the one to tell me that still sends my blood boiling. I would prefer someone more agreeable, less of an arse. It's a hard truth to swallow, especially when the very person at the center of it makes denial difficult. Can't even spare me a minute of his attention, or a single glance at me the whole evening. Hell, Zachary might have spoken more words to me. The big guy's busy covering the event to boot. But at least he manages to slip in a conversation or two between takes, or a small wave of his hands when he passes by. What's Ashton's excuse? He's been flitting in and out of sight the whole time. One moment he's hanging around a small group, and another he's hovering around the string band. Just a second ago, he's wolfing down some deviled eggs by the buffet table, glass of wine in hand. Next thing I know, he's gone. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he doesn't want to be with any of his friends. Is it because his boss is here? What's the big deal about that? He has never bothered him before.
I swear, the next person who asks, I'm dancing the night away with. Ashton can go fuck himself.
You would catch his eye a lot better if you wore nicer clothes, don't you think?
Her voice almost makes me jump, too focused on the gobshite wandering around the ballroom and my own annoyance to notice. If she's heard any of the profanities I've muttered, or she's taken notice of my discomfiture, she makes no comment on it, merely greeting me with a smile when I turn my attention to her. Miss Hannah Wright gives off a whole different air when she's not speaking to an audience. Homely, a bit too friendly for my liking, but I guess that comes from being raised in such an environment and having to deal with pompous, snooty people. Though I suppose nothing has really changed from years ago. I remember her carrying herself in the same manner during that one and only visit. Does she remember any of it? I won't be surprised if she doesn't. It has taken me a while myself. Probably met a lot of people like little Becky through the years. Might have already forgotten about me or my parents. People like her thrive on connections after all. Nevertheless, I return her smile, awkward and stiff as it may be.
Didn't realize the housewarming was going to be this, fancy. I would have gone with a nice dress if I knew.
Oh, you're fine, dearie. It's only really the parvenus, those who climb, that come to these parties all dolled up. Quite the black-haired beauty, isn't he?
It takes me a while to realize who she's talking about, until Ashton walks by again in closer proximity than any other time she has done so before this evening. Still without a look of acknowledgement our way, though, even if Mrs. Wright speaks loud enough to catch the attention of anyone within earshot.
Who, Ash?
You know, you really shouldn't have turned down those offers. If I wasn't married, I'd happily go dancing with those young men. But you said a name. Ash. That's the exquisite lad you've been looking at all this time. I don't know him, and I'm the one hosting this party. That must mean you know each other. Is he your boyfriend, then? Because that would explain those rejections.
This isn't the first time someone has made that assumption. Almost every student I've had in the past did. My coworkers, more often than not, assume he is. A few of my neighbors also think we're an item. Not that Ashton has ever reacted to those. He's been quite indifferent about it, in fact. Still, the heat of a blush creeps up my cheeks, a denial ready, despite wanting it to happen so badly myself.
Oh, what? No, that's ridiculous. He isn't my boyfriend.
Such a violent reaction. A simple no would have sufficed. Many here would be happy to hear it.
And I haven't been looking at him.
I do my best to summon a straight face before her good cheer. It easily falters.
That's right. You've been staring. Quite heatedly, in fact. Although I'm not sure if you look like you want to kiss him or kill him.
It's more the latter currently.
Just don't go murdering him on my property. I don't want to walk into a room and suddenly find a body there.
It's infectious in a way. No sooner I find myself enjoying our chat more than I've imagined myself to. Although her attention briefly wavers at one point, she remains a good companion. Even more once I've mentioned who my parents are. Her face quickly lights up, and fondness graces her face, despite the meeting from several years ago being a short one. But of course, there are some things we really can't avoid talking about. After all, it's one of the few things I remember her asking me the moment she spotted little Becky in the room. Do you have a boyfriend? In retrospect, it's an odd thing to talk about as children, when there are loads we could have started with.
Yes, oh, I remember you! You were the cutest little thing with glasses! And when we met, you were having boy troubles with this lad called something with an A.
I believe I still have the clothes she gave me. Chosen, all so I could impress him. And even back then, Ashton has always been denser than a rock, and that one attempt to get him to notice backfired spectacularly. Sure, he's keen, he's a detective for heaven's sake, but feelings, more often than not, escapes him.
What was it again? Aaron, Alan, Adele, Albert, Alexander, Andrew?
Which makes this whole talk all the more embarrassing. And the more names she lists off, the more my discomfort grows until my smile turns into a grimace. Oh, what will she think of me? Here she is, married to a man she probably loves at that, while I'm stuck in the same place, yearning for the same person.
Ashton! Ash! That man is that boy! The same one. Oh, goodness me, after all these years! I can see why, though. He's quite dashing.
You don't really need to announce it to everyone within earshot, you know? Keep it down.
I'm so sorry, but it really is cute.
She says that, but for a short moment a hint of pity flickers in her eyes. I take that as a chance to change the subject before anything more can be said over the matter. I haven't even figured out how I should feel about the things Luke told me. Now I'm getting dragged into a similar discussion.
So, this is a nice party, Miss Wright.
I really do like Hannah. I'm not sure if it was intentional from the writers to make her so pleasant, especially since she's going to be kind of the root of evil, it seems like. But if it was intentional, good job. Though to be frank, I doubt she'll be willing to pass this up. The topic has already captured her attention.
Please, Anna's fine. We're friends of a sort, aren't we? We must be friends, seeing as I know about your little infatuation, Becky. Don't you worry, dearie. You'll have your happy ending yet.
I'm not too concerned about that, am I? That's not what I'm looking for.
Oh? And what makes you think that? Doesn't everybody want their happy ending?
The idea of happy endings sounds like they're just for fairy tales.
And massage parlors.
And they are, sorta. I don't think you can just sit around, trapped in some tower and hope for the best. If you love them, you have to fight for it, right? You're not just going to sit there and hope that everything will just fix itself on its own. Like everything, you have to work at it.
Hypocrisy, that's what this is. How dare I preach about something when it's exactly what I've been doing? And then, I go and act as if I'm entitled to any of it. That by virtue of us growing up together, he must return whatever I feel for him. That he's not allowed to look at another because I'm the one has stayed by his side the longest. When in the first place, Ashton has always been his own person. This is something I cannot force on him. I can only hold on to these, take care of it until the time comes I can confess it to him. Great if he reciprocates, but if he can't? If he won't? Selfish. I've been too selfish. How laughable that Luke's words still strike true up until now.
But what do I know?
I'm sure the daughter of the two greatest professors I've ever known is smart enough to know what she's talking about.
At one point, maybe I would have easily agreed to that. However, the past few weeks have also seen changes in the way I view things. As nice as these things sound, it turns out whatever I previously know may not even be true for other people, or for myself. It is sobering and almost funny how things might have said with such certainty before now has doubts muddying each of them. But there will be time to mull about these things later, because when a hush suddenly descends into the room, a whole different issue rears. Especially when fucking Luke, strides into the now quiet ballroom, fashionably late and oozing with the same pompous mien he always carries around with him.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Enjoying the party? I hope I'm not too late in welcoming you all to the right mansion.
Before long, Hana leaves my side to join him, and it doesn't take a genius to piece it all together.
Welcome, one and all, to our humble abode. Tonight, if you have yet to find yourself in your roles, you are all ladies and lords of the court of your king and queen, if you would excuse my presumptuousness. So, enjoy the feast that has been laid out for your senses as we only allowed the best to be served. Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone!
His attitude, the manner he carries himself around people, his unfamiliarity with that part of the city. Of fucking course. I should have known. Although I'm partly at fault here. Tabloids and the gossip columns have never been really my thing. I should have also expected that whatever Luke fucking Wright is, some sort of drama will sure follow. He seems the kind of person who revels in it, figures it'll find him on its own, even when he's not asking for it. It happens amidst a round of applause and hoots. The people lagging behind the crowd that have gathered does not catch on until the cheers turn into several scandalized gasps.
I am pregnant with your little bastard. You promised me you'll take responsibility. God damn it, Luke. I finally got you to talk to me after months of silence, and you do this to me.
What do you mean you're pregnant with? Luke, is this true?
Lies and slander, woman! Security! Johans, take her out of here before she makes an even bigger fool of herself!
No, you do not do this to me. I was so ready to leave my stupid oaf of a husband. I told you to leave that damn wife of yours. Look at her. Does she look like she wants a baby? Does she look like she could take care of a baby?
The commotion doesn't go further, despite the drunk woman appearing like she has plenty more venom to spill. In a little while, security shows up, escorting her out. Apparently, she's the chief inspector's wife, too. As if this whole thing can't get any more fucked up than it already is. What a mess. But the damage has been done, and beyond the repercussions this'll bring, I'm more worried about Hana. Maybe Luke too, in part. I've seen the man that hides behind his self-importance, and it is someone who cares for the person who stands beside him, no matter how questionable that is now. After all, no anger is worse than that of a scorned woman. He's lucky, though, that he is not the subject of the object of it anytime soon. That his wife loves him enough not to believe any of the woman's drunken prattles.
Take that trollop out of here immediately! And see to it that she isn't allowed here, or anywhere we hold any authority in Luxbourne!
Hana's outrage is a strange sight to witness, after those smiles and the grace she has carried herself through the entirety of the party. Like this, her eyes burning bright with fury, I don't doubt she can do so much more, ruin the scandalous woman if need be. Shaming her is already an act of mercy, generous enough coming from her.
Everyone, please go back to enjoying the party. Don't let that mess of a woman ruin your night.
You heard her! Strike up the band, maestro, and let us dance like fireflies in the night!
Yet when she turns to Luke, eyes gleaming with hope, something feels off. Something I can't quite place. Hers is not the face of a person who so ardently loves. There's a lack of tenderness in it, an absence of warmth, and sincere affection. It is the kind that constricts, suffocates.
Well, that was a mess, wasn't it? And you handled it magnificently.
It happens. We are very important people, are we not?
No one seems to have noticed it, however, and at their command, music resumes. There's a brief lull, a reluctant pause before the place comes astir again, but shortly the buzz returns to the room. Dancers have once again taken to the floor, and their guests' excited chatter begins anew. Maybe it's just my imagination?
Milady, would you like to dance?
With pleasure, my prince.
The unsettling feeling in my stomach remains, however, even as the strained atmosphere dissolves into merriment. Even as I watch the couple lose themselves in the moment, or the people around them join them in it. It grips me all the more when, once I have the haul, the last glimpse I catch of Hana is her smile. A thin, unearthly one spreading across her soft features. The porter closes the door behind me with a soft click, but all I hear from it are the chilling whispers. Those that seem to echo along with another familiar grin in my mind. Help me. The brush of fresh air against my cheek does little to dampen the nervous edge in my bones. Away from the rush of the party, I just feel bone-tired. It's late. I've accomplished nothing of what I've come here for, and Ashton's nowhere to be found. I'm not sure what pisses me off more. That he ignored me the whole evening, and might have just left without saying anything, or knowing he obviously has some other motive for being here. Can't he at least trust his own friends for that?
He didn't have to hide it from me.
He's not even answering his phone. That man has always been difficult to contact when he's out. But you'd think he'd at least have the decency to keep the lines open if he's going to wander off on a party. One that he happened to attend with his friends at that. I let the call ring for 9 more times before cutting it off. No use trying to find someone who refuses to be found. I can get home on my own. I don't need him. He can just...
Becca, where'd you go off to?
If you're done here, let's go. I'll get you back to the city. My mistake, the second his voice cuts through the crisp air night, is that I've allowed my annoyances to get the better of me. Fuming, patience forgotten, I whirl around and march towards him. One accusation after another piles up on the tip of my tongue, ready to be hurled at any moment. There's no hesitation holding me back when I fling it at him. The straight face he keeps as I do so doesn't temper my anger either. It only makes me want to slap some more sense into him.
Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?
Becca, I've been waiting here the whole time since that mess in the hall. I told you I hate parties like...
And before that, where have you been the entire evening?
Right then and there, I might have forgiven him if he'd shown some ounce of remorse for leaving me like that. Maybe he could have looked away and given me a sign that my assumption might be right. He doesn't even need to put them into words. A single gesture of confirmation is all I need. Rather, what I get is the same impassive look. He does that whenever he can't disclose anything. He does that whenever he's lying. In the face of it, amidst the thick of tension, a frustrated huff is the only thing I can summon.
Be that way. Fine. Suit yourself.
No more words. After everything I've seen and heard tonight, I'm already too exhausted for those. So, without speaking any further, I simply walk past him and stomp over his car. Although before I can pull open the door, he calls out, one hand outstretched, a gentle weight on my shoulders.
Wait, Becca.
He pauses, his brows furrowing, lips curving into a slight frown. I can almost see the gears turning in his head when he tries to piece together everything he wants to say. But before, perhaps, I might have waited patiently for those. He's not a man fond of using words to express himself. More often than not, any gesture of honesty will only come out blunt and coarse when forced. But today, for one reason or another, I simply can't summon that forbearance.
Ashton, if you're just going to waste my time again...
Becca, listen. I don't know how else...
That much is obvious. Why don't you just take the whole bloody night? Go on. I can wait until next year. Better yet, why don't you just keep it all to yourself like you always do? It's not like...
Rebecca, will you hear me out first?
The silence I can offer him, but whatever I'll believe, what he's about to say is still up for debate. A very long debate.
I honestly don't know how else to put this. I'm aware your parents have some kind of history with Hana Wright, and somehow you're friends with her. But you should stay away from these people for now, especially the husband.
Who? Luke?
His expression deepens into a scowl at my mention of the name, but whatever opinion he has, he doesn't immediately voice. Still, something about it has greatly displeased him, evident in the stiff note his tone assumes.
Yeah, he's bad news.
It's my turn to frown this time. What does he mean by that? Why don't we stop it there? This is audap. I'm watching The Letter running on Series X. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.